Hi, this is Scott Garibay, and today I'm going to be talking about Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition and how non-player characters help player characters. Alright, so within our games, and this is a dungeon mastering tip for a skilled veteran dungeon master. Alright, so one of the things that that happens a lot is quest givers, right? You know, quest givers they're tropes in video games. They're in every Dungeons & Dragons game. That NPC that's there to give a quest, right? But one of the things that I was noticing today, because they're such a trope and they're so common, I think it's really important that we do something to switch it up and make sure that we try to approach this from a different angle, right? So I came across a conversation on Twitter that gave me a fantastic idea for how to aid player characters with non-player characters. And here's how you do it, right? It's just a new tack. It's a new, different way. It's just one more different way that you can give a quest, and you can actually have the quest play out and have an NPC very tangibly, very really give aid to a player character, but in the worst possible fashion, right? And so it's helping an NPC, helping very tangibly and very beneficially a player character, but in a way that is painful, annoying, and abrasive, right? Right? And I just love, and this came from Twitter. So I'm going to tell you the real world story that prompts this, and then I'll explain how you execute it within Dungeons and Dragons, okay, as a dungeon master. All right, so here goes. All right, so I'm on Twitter, and I actually have been spending a lot of time on Twitter lately. From the perspective of I really enjoy the interactions there, because I really feel it's a community that are writers or respect writers or are interested in writers. I really feel like the written word is the preeminent message vector specifically within Twitter, right? Facebook, the message vector there is everyone. Just virtually everyone is on Facebook. They have mass popularity, and so you're going to reach the most people if you're on Facebook. If you're on Twitter, you're going to reach writers, and they're going to be thoughtful, and they're going to be they're going to put more thought into what they put onto that platform. It's one of the reasons why I'm spending time there. I also think Instagram, I'm starting to understand these social media sites better. Instagram is where you go to deal with people who do not like to say a lot of words and are trying to communicate without words. I think that's the way to understand Instagram and how it functions, right? So I'm on Twitter, and I come across this, and there are a lot of people give writing advice on Twitter, and I follow a lot of them, right? So I got to this one horror writer. I think they write horror short stories. They do. They write horror short stories. And I'm not going to say the name because I don't want to embarrass this person too much, because I thought it was an embarrassing interaction overall for the person who did the initial thread. And it was a thread. So the person says, hey, don't let anybody keep you down. Don't let anybody stop you from reaching your dreams. And don't let anyone belittle your achievements, right? And I'm like, okay, this is interesting. Let's see where this goes. All right, and so the writer says, okay, when I was in college, I took a class in college on magazine article writing, right? And the teacher said at the beginning of the course, anyone who sells a piece to a major publication will get an A in this class. Period. Right? And then the writer said, I went home. Immediately, I wrote a query letter, and I sent it to Fangoria, right? Fangoria picked this out of the slush pile and said, bet, we're in, we'll take it, we purchase it, right? I got my first professional sale. Writer says, I get my first professional sale. I take the correspondence between me and the Fangoria editor back to the professor. And the professor says, nope, you're not getting an A. I think you knew this editor. You already had an established relationship with this editor. They're your friend. It doesn't count. You don't get the A, right? And then the writer reiterated his initial point. He said, I can't believe that teacher would not, acknowledged my achievements and tried to stop me from accomplishing my dream. How dare that teacher do this? And I was like, what? Wait, what? Now this is a summary of what the person had put forward. And I just came back. I immediately came back. I said, wait. Are you following your own thread? The teacher said, if you do this, you will get an A. You were then prompted to write a query letter, and you got your first professional sale directly from an action you took based on what the teacher said, the professor said, in your college course. Like, this sounds like what you're saying is that this would be like if you were sitting at a table and a teacher threw you a heavy bar of gold. It says, that's yours. You catch it sitting at the table. You catch this heavy bar of gold, right? And the heavy bar of gold slams your hand down onto the table. You now have a bruise. You have two things. You have a bruise and you have a heavy bar of gold. And what you really want to focus on is to make sure that people understand, don't let people bruise your hand. Right? I was like, you're not seeing the forest for the trees, man. That teacher said do X. You immediately did Y. You immediately did the next following action, and that turned into your first professional sale. And all you can see is that you lost the A in the course, right? Like the reward you had already received was so far greater than the thing you are upset that you lost that it's frankly ridiculous, right? So this professor massively helped this writer, but the writer, because they were focused on the bruise on their hand, did not really understand what had actually occurred and had beef with the teacher, the professor, who had prompted them to do this professional sale, right? And so I said that, as I said my part on, I responded back, and they said, "No, teacher didn't have anything to do with it. I would have sent it, and it would have worked out the same way without the teacher." And I was like, "Oh my goodness, you poor sad soul," right? The idea. So just to understand, right? I am a writer. Writing is incredibly hard and incredibly difficult, right? There's 3 parts to successful writing: write, finish, send. Do you know how many writers don't finish the writing, don't finish finishing, right? Don't actually finish their projects. And there's a ton of writers who write and finish and never send, right? The idea that person can assume they would have sent without that prompting is ridiculous, right? There's a good possibility they would have never sent, right? Or they would never have had sent. And here's the other one. Even if they had sent later, the idea that the same editor would have been in Fangoria, that the impetus, that the fire that was lit under that writer's butt to write that query letter right then, right, with as much quality as possible, would have happened at any time is absurd, right? Teachers are so frequently not given credit for the integral part they play in giving people momentum, right? And here's a classic example of someone not understanding the importance of what a teacher has accomplished, right? And for us as human beings, don't focus on the bruise. Focus on the gold bar that is in your hands. See the full picture, right? This writer didn't understand that they were cheated out of an A and given their first professional sale, right? And the idea that you're going to be able to accomplish what you're going to be able to accomplish without somebody in your timeline doing exactly what they did in exact time, you need to rewatch The Butterfly Effect, man. You cannot assume you would have gotten there without that person doing that thing in that time, right? All right, so I read this interaction. I interacted with the writer and said, you really should recognize the teacher for what the teacher did. You lost the A. You gained a professional sale. That's huge, right? So here's how we put this into our Dungeons & Dragons game. All right, you have your player characters. The player characters come across a tinkerer, right? And the tinkerer tells them about that 3 villages to the northeast, there is a cairn, and in that cairn is that he heard this tale from a bard. that in that cairn, there is a magical sword that was captured at the exact point of its molten forging, okay? And that this special sword, this magical sword, has a special hilt, right? And a special scabbard that keep this sword and its magical properties itself. So, well, actually, it has these magical properties. It was ensorcelled, right? It was enchanted at the exact moment when it was forged, so that it still glows with the glowing embers of the heat that was used to temper it, right? And that, so essentially the sword glows with the heat of being forged, right? Of being actively forged, right? But it is razor sharp, and it, and essentially it's like captured in a moment of time. The sword has a magical hilt that, when held, will protect the wielder from the heat, and the scabbard will allow it to be carried, right? Because it's incredibly hot, right? And because of this, it can cut through items that normal swords cannot normally touch, all right? Now, if that sounds like a pretty cool magical item that comes straight from the Dragon Prince, which is a brand new Netflix series, it is absolutely fantastic. If you are a Dungeons & Dragons fan, and you like funny fantasy, you're going to love this show. I highly recommend it. I watched it with my whole family, my wife, my two youngest children. My two oldest kids are out of the house, so they couldn't watch with us. We had a blast watching that show. I highly recommend the Dragon Prince. This idea for this magical item comes directly from the show, and you can actually see this weapon used in the show. It's pretty awesome, actually. All right, okay. So the PCs are told about this magical place they can go, about this cairn at 3 miles north of a village to the northeast. The PCs go exactly where the Tinkerer told to go. They find the entrance to the cairn. They go into the cairn, right? Now, this is why this is for skilled veteran game masters. They absolutely cannot reach the, well, actually, you're going to put 5 different traps and foes for them before they get to the sword, okay? The first one is going to be a rune trap. The second one is going to be a fungi trap. The third one is going to be swarming insects trap. The fourth one is going to be a large subterranean monster. And the last is another rune trap, okay? All right, so if they go into the cairn, where they find the cairn at the entrance, right, they are going to get their butt kicked. And you want to make it so that they actually cannot. Now, if they can get all the way through, that's fine. You should make it so that half their party will die if they go straight through, right? And you want to start projecting clues right out of the gate that you're like, you guys are really, really damaged badly. You get the idea that this is incredibly well protected, and that you don't know if you have everything necessary to go all the way down to the bottom of the cairn to get this sword, right? And you're thinking, well, that village had, it seemed like it had a small tavern. Maybe we should go back. There was a small tavern near the village. Maybe we should go back to the small tavern and regroup. That's what you want to get them to do, right? Now, if they want to kill themselves doing it, let them. Like that. That's one of the things as a skilled veteran game master. You sit back, you let what's going to happen. But make the amount of foes and traps that it will kill half their party, okay? Now, if the PCs realize that the challenge is too high and they have to back out, okay? At that point, what you do is you have them go to the tavern. They go to the small tavern that's located near the village, okay? And that night, there's a bard in the tavern, and they go in, and there's hot mutton, and there's about 30 or 40 people in this tavern, right? By the way, I'm sorry, you might need to make it not a village, but a town. Make it a town, right? Because the village wouldn't have a decent tavern. So this is a decent, very warm, inviting tavern where it's a perfect place for them to lick their wounds, right? Well, they get in there and they come across and they're eating their mutton, and a young person comes over, like a shepherd hand, like a shepherd, local shepherd, right? They have sheep near this town, right? He says, "What happened? You guys look like you've really been damaged badly." right? And so if the player characters tell them what occurred, right, this old town member will go, "You adventurers." They'll look over, right, and he goes, "You adventurers are so stupid. All of you come into this town. You're just the most ridiculous, laughable lot, right? You come into this town, you've heard the rumor, and you go over to the cairn, and you all do the same thing," right? And now the bard comes in, right? He sees this happening, and he starts actually strumming along to like punctuate what the old townsman is saying, right? And he goes, "Because you don't know the town, and you don't take the time to investigate our home. If you had just walked 3/4 of a mile around the cairn, you would have seen that there's a cavern near the back where it will take you on an underground path that gets you 4/5 of the way down into the bottom of the cairn with minimal trouble. You fools," right? And then the bard is actually, strumming along, and he, and he makes comedic strumming where when the townsman is done, everyone laughs at the adventurers and like, "Oh my goodness, you dummies! If only you had known the wisdom of this old man and just walked 3/4 of a mile around, you would have been able to pick it up with very little trouble," right? So at this point, he is making everyone in the tavern laugh at them. He has insulted them to no end. By the way, this guy is also a shepherd. His weapon is literally a stick, right? It's a crook, right? So you may have player characters who are going to slay him because they've been insulted. That could happen. That's your game. What's going to happen is going to happen. We just set the pins up, right? We don't determine how they fall, right? So, but you want him to be as insulting as possible, and you want those player characters to feel the bard and that old townsman making every person at that tavern just laugh at their expense. And they are laughing at them. They are not laughing with them, right? Now, this player character has insulted them deeply, right? But he is also 100% right. If they go back there, the 4/5 of the way, they just walk all the way there, and then there's a dark mantle. There's some dark mantles that are up on the top of the area. If they can defeat the dark mantle, they just have to go through. They have to chip through about 6 inches of rock, right? And at which there's even some clues that somebody has already attempted this and given up, right? That if they can just get through just the dark mantles and actually chip through actually just pull out some rubble, right? That they'll actually make their way through down to the main chamber through a back entrance, right? And so this is a hugely beneficial help that the NPC has given the player characters. But he has done it in the worst way possible. He has insulted them, right? And made them to feel small and little. But the reality is he has incredibly helped them, right? And so you want to make his back entrance absolutely minimally easy, minor abrasions for the player characters, and then get a huge gold item out of that. And so, and then hopefully if your players are paying attention, they can learn a real life lesson, which is sometimes when it looks like somebody has given you a slight abrasion, an aggravation, when they have insulted you, they may actually be helping you. Don't see the small annoyances as larger than the actual clear practical benefits that have been given to you. That's the point. I'm curious what you think about this, using this approach for player character to bring player characters to a quest in a different way. Let me know your thoughts below, and please consider liking and subscribing. Thank you very much.